Today we're talking about the bigger, better version of the P365, the P365XL RomeoZero. Are you ready? Stand by. Welcome back to the Humble Marksman channel. I'm David and I'll be your guide in pursuit of practical pistol proficiency. And today we are talking about one heck of a carry gun that is less popular than its littler older brother, the P365XL RomeoZero. Now I'm going to start with some controversy, which is what you guys like because this is the internet and that's all it's for, is drama. And to make the bold statement that a gun this size is actually superior in pretty much every dimension to the P365 regular size. So a lot of you guys are going to yell at me, and let's just wade into that real quick. First and foremost, concealability. You are losing an academic amount of concealability by gaining a 3-finger grip on the pistol. Since this is a small, lightweight pistol, they tend to be very snappy. By adding another finger onto the grip, you gain a lot of control on the gun and 2 additional rounds. Second, you have a longer barrel. Self-defense loads require a longer barrel to develop velocity so that hollow points can expand. So you're gaining about a 1/2 inch of extra barrel to help your hollow points perform like they're supposed to. Additionally, if you went to the iron sight route and not the red dot route, you would have longer sight radius, which makes hitting with the iron sights a little bit easier. And the slide is just a little bit heavier, so actually controlling recoil with a gun about this size is going to be easier. And here is the controversial bit. A gun like this actually carries better than its shorter barreled brethren in a belt right holster. If you consider where all of the weight in a gun like this is, and it's going to be in the magazine, in the grip here, it is suspended by your waist, it's going to want to flop and turn out over your belt. By having a longer slide, it's putting more mass below your belt line, kind of counterbalancing all the weight in the grip. And additionally, you're getting some leverage from the slightly longer barrel that is helping keep it stay put inside your waistband. So for pretty much all of the reasons I just said, a gun this size is going to perform better in pretty much every aspect than a shorter barrel, shorter grip variation of the gun. So that's the first controversial bit of information for this gun. Go ahead and sound off in the comments. Would you prefer something this size or the traditional P365 size? Let me know in the comments, guys. So regardless of where you fall on which P365 size is your favorite, the P365 undeniably changed the role of the micro compact in the US concealed carry market. Previously, this would be a single stack gun with only 7 or 8 rounds if you're lucky, but they managed to figure out a new design on their magazines to cram a whole bunch of rounds in it. So a gun this small, roughly the size of my hand, has 12 rounds on tap, which is quite impressive. And for my YouTube censor who's reviewing this video, ready to hit the "that's a modified gun" button, it's not a modified gun. This is actually listed in Sig Sauer's 2020 catalog. This is how the gun comes from the factory. The P365XL had the rear sight area milled out to accept the Romeo Zero, which Sig Sauer released this year. So the P365XL actually comes with an electronic sight from the factory, which is exciting to me because the Sky and previously the Sig Sauer RX models were about the only ones doing it. So I'm excited to see them continue to offer red dot sights on the guns from the factory. If you're the kind of viewer who came so that some guy in his living room can read you stats that are on the website, I'm just going to put them on the screen and you can pause it and read them, and then we're moving on. So my reviews follow a typical format, and there are time codes in the description that you can click on to jump to the parts that are of interest to you, but they follow a typical flow, and that's going to be initial impressions, things that I don't like, the frame, the slide and sights, the trigger, the rest of the controls, the shooting experience, and because this is a concealed carry piece, the concealed carry experience, the aftermarket, and then final thoughts. So with that all said, let's dig in. So as far as initial impressions go, the first thing you're gonna have is sticker shock, because this sucker costs nearly $800 when it comes with the red dot sight on it. But as you work your way around the gun and you feel the fit and finish of the pistol, you'll notice that it actually does feel like a quality pistol. In no way does this feel like a consumer grade pistol, and feels absolutely in line with like a service grade pistol like a military or Leo outfit might use. The grip feels good, although being quite small. The sights are pretty rock and roll. The red dot sight is nice and bright and actually a very usable size. So they're gonna hand it to you, and honestly, you're gonna like it. It feels great in hand, and it feels like a pistol that should cost about $800 based around the features that the gun comes with. The gun caboodle that the gun comes with is another story. It is a piece of trash. The hinges fall off, and Sig decided to take a page out of Glock's book, which is just give you this egg carton lined plastic clamshell to ship your pistol in. It's got hasps for locks in case you wanted to fly with it, but the hinges are so lousy that I would honestly recommend something a little bit more robust like the Vault from Pelican. Those are pretty good to fly with. So things that I don't like about the pistol. Honestly, I do really like this pistol, so it's tough for me to just throw some things that I don't like at you, but let's get started. First and foremost, they give us a witness hole on the hood of the barrel to allow us to see whether or not a round is in the chamber. That's all well and good, but why not put it on the side so that this little hole doesn't spew gas up into the air getting onto the lens of your optic? Seems like a gun that is made specifically for optics that you would move that over to the side. Sig, you fixed it on the X5, it'd be good to fix it on the P365XL. Next is the shape of the trigger guard. Honestly, it kind of rubs my knuckle. I won't call it like Sig knuckle or anything crazy like that, as it's not particularly uncomfortable, but there is some rubbing that takes place on my knuckle underneath the guard, but not enough to really complain about, just a little bit of low-grade whining. Third, the trigger. The trigger is super duper creepy. There are like 3 false walls when you get into it. We'll get into more of this later, but it's got kind of a gritty, crunchy, spongy trigger. Not very clean, but it is still very usable. And what I really don't like about the pistol is the magazine cost. We'll cover that in the aftermarket, but let's move on. Now let's move on to the frame. There are 2 ways that a frame will sort of help you develop control over the gun. The first is the geometry of the frame and how it meets up with your hand, which is super important on a concealed carry gun because that's about all you get. And then there is the traction. Now, because this is a small gripped pistol used in concealed carry, traction actually is less important than geometry because your support hand can't make its way onto the grip to find the traction. So the geometry is going to be the #1 thing holding the gun in place. And to that point, the grip tang and the relief under the trigger guard are very, very well done. There's almost like a finger groove underneath the trigger guard that gives you very high access up underneath it. And it absolutely throws the grip tang back into the web of your hand. So you can stabilize the gun very well without a whole lot of effort from your shooting hand. So that's nice to have. The traction, not a big deal. The stuff on the side panels, I mean, you feel it. It feels a little bit like an emery board, but not a very good one. But the front and back straps of the gun are significantly more aggressive. And because this is a self-defense gun with a little grip, that's where you want the aggressive texture. So the frame is very well designed. Added bonus feature, which is kind of strange, is the magwell on this thing is absolutely huge. Now, this is a feature that isn't necessarily important on a gun in this class, but it's really easy to just throw the magazines down there. I'm talking hot dog down a hallway, guys. It is super easy. And on an unrelated note, I like to refer to pistols in this class of pistols as clown cars because you're trying to get your big old mitts on not a lot of pistols. So it just kind of disappears, much like a bunch of big dudes piling into a clown car. So moving on to the slide and the sights, the machining on the pistol is very well done. The serrations are very usable and they are exactly where you would want them to be to manipulate the pistol, whether it's in the front or the back of the slide. Since the barrel is longer, there's more space to grab onto for you guys who like to manipulate from the front, which is what I do. The finish on the slide actually seems to be pretty good. I've been using the Harry's holster singleton to carry this thing, and I've put it in and out of this holster, I don't know how many, I've lost count, but hundreds of times just to see if I could induce slide wear prematurely on the pistol, and I could not. The only thing that happened is the trigger guard got a little bit shiny like they typically do with the Kydex holster. So the slide is very squared away. As far as the sights are concerned, you have two options. The electronic sight comes on the gun, but they do actually provide the rear sight for the X-ray sight. So you can run this with irons and night sights with the cover plate on, or you can use the Romeo Zero that comes on the pistol. I chose the red dot, and the Romeo Zero, I'll do another video going in depth on it, but it has a very bright dot. This is the 6 MOA version, and in a sunny day, midday, I have no problem seeing this dot. It absolutely shows up great. Whether or not the sight feels like it was 3D printed and is in danger of being crushed by my hand is another story, but it has worked very well for both carry and just shooting on the range, so not an issue there. And the Romeo Zero actually has a rear sight built into the base of it, so you can still get a true lower, 1/5 co-witness with these sights. So now let's discuss the trigger. And a trigger is really going to be evaluated on sort of two dimensions. First and foremost is the form factor, the ergonomics, if you will, the trigger reach and how accessible the trigger is. Is it easy to place your finger on it and get a straight to the rear trigger pull? And the second is the mechanical quality of the trigger. Once you begin that trigger pull, is it going to be a nice trigger pull or kind of a lousy one? So let's start with what a good trigger pull should feel like. There's going to be a slight take up where there is very smooth, very even. This is when the mechanical safeties in the gun are starting to be defeated. Then you're going to hit a wall. Now, there are two types of good triggers. There's going to be the hard wall that just stays there until you overcome it, and it's like a glass rod breaking and a very crisp release. Small bit of over travel, and then you're met with a very short reset, which this has. The other type would be more of like a rolling break where it is very smooth, glides through until the hammer releases, almost like a double action. This actually is neither of those. The reach on the trigger is very good, very nice. The profile of the trigger is good. It is a flat face trigger, which is very vogue right now. But whether you're a first joint kind of guy pulling the trigger or somebody who likes to split the pad or even use your fingertip, you'll be able to do all of that with this gun because the frame is shaped so well. Once you start that trigger pull, that's when the experience starts to kind of degrade because the trigger pull is not great. For guys who like to make fun of Glock triggers, you could make fun of this one for all the same reasons. So the problem is I'm on the wall now and I keep pulling, keep pulling, keep pulling. Okay, there's the first movement right there as there is a good bit of creep, and keep pulling, keep pulling, keep pulling. There's another bit of movement, keep pulling, and then it goes on that third bit of movement. So when I was putting this on the gauge, and this gauge at just under 5 pounds on my gauge, it felt weird to pull it with the trigger gauge because of the false walls as you would break through them. So the trigger pull is kind of creepy, but it is light and it is very easy to get a good finger position on. So all in all, the trigger is just a little better than okay as far as I'm concerned. But it's not all bad. As I mentioned, the reset on the pit trigger is very positive and it throws your finger forward and is very short, large tactile click there, and it's ready to go again. It's a very good reset, which is good when you're trying to shoot fast because if the trigger is throwing your finger forward as you're trying to pull the trigger as fast as you can, it kind of assists in how quickly you can get on the trigger again. So it's a nice feature to have and something that I would want on a good trigger. But to give you a more objective view, I use the world's most objective instrument, which is the Humble Marksman trigger rating system. This is hands down the most accurate trigger rating system on the internet, and this rated the trigger at a warm bowl full of mush.
Good night, nobody. Good night, mush.
High marks for the ergonomics of the trigger and middling marks for the actual mechanical quality of it. Talking about the rest of the controls on the pistol, this thing has had a concealed carry mount, and as a result, the controls are basically perfect for concealed carry. The takedown lever has been molded to be usable when you want to get at it, but it's not going to get in the way when it's not. The slide release to actually drop the slide on a fresh mag is exactly where you'd want it to be and is very usable. Despite not being big and protruding out way too far, the mag release button is a little bit difficult to get at, but this is a concealed carry pistol, guys. We're not going to go out and shoot matches with this gun generally, so you don't need a huge honking mag release. The more important bit is on this clown car pistol, your finger isn't going to hit the mag button and make you dislodge your magazine. So the controls are really quite good, unless you're left-handed because the slide stop is not ambi. I suspect the mag release can be switched, but I don't care about you left-handed people enough to go through the hassle of doing it, but I bet that it probably is. So here's your second chance to comment. You left-handed people love telling me you're left-handed, so go ahead and tell me in the comments right now that you're left-handed. Moving on. Now, the shooting experience on this gun is honestly pretty good. For most guns in this kind of clown car class, they're very snappy, they have a loud muzzle report because they have very short barrels, and they're not really beginner type guns. I wouldn't hand this to your wife or girlfriend who's never shot before and be like, all right, honey, go get them. Come on, guys, use some sense. Get her a bigger, heavier gun that's a little more gentle. So the thing is going to be a handful. If you have good fundamentals and good technique, you can run this thing like a sewing machine. It is very capable. However, because it is so light, it's easy to pull the muzzle offline during the trigger pull. But if you can manage to pull the trigger straight to the rear, you'll be rewarded as the gun is very mechanically accurate. And because it comes with a Romeo Zero sight on the back of it, it extends the range of what you would traditionally think as being a pistol range. So I was ringing steel at 50 yards with this thing, no problem. Because the magazines are so large for the clown car segment, you don't have to keep stuffing them over and over again. 12 rounds, it is large enough to get a good range day in with it. So training with the gun is pretty nice. And because the grip is just a little bit longer when you actually go to draw out of the holster, there's more to grab onto. So it's easier to draw than, say, its older, littler brother. All that to say is I really enjoyed shooting this pistol. It reminded me of my Glock 43X that I tricked out at a significantly lower price. So if you want a lot of that experience, this would be a good stand-in for that. Now, moving into this pistol's core competency, which is the concealed carry experience. This gun is very light, and it is pretty small. It's just the right amount of small where you're gonna wanna carry it in a belt ride holster. Now, I carried it in the Harry's Holsters Singleton holster set up for the appendix position, and this holster with this gun was divine to carry with. And the reason that is because it holds 13 rounds of ammunition. It's very comfortable, it's very lightweight, and you don't even notice that it's there. The Singleton makes that experience very, very comfortable due to the foam pad that it's got and this claw just making the pistol absolutely disappear, and it's just super comfortable. If you've watched the channel for a long time, you know I've been using Harry's holsters for years. You can save 10% with the code The Humble Marksman. It's a $40 holster plus these options like another 20 bucks or whatever, and it's a lot of holster for the money. He 3D scans the guns, he designs the holsters in CAD, vacuum forms them, and then uses a CNC router to precisely cut all of the things. So what you get is a super high quality holster. So if your context is, you know, like a suburban office type context where you're not going anywhere dangerous after dark, you don't need a light or anything like that, this pistol really gets the job done nicely because it's super lightweight, it's very comfortable to wear, and it still carries a convincing amount of ammunition. Plus the addition of the Romeo Zero, it can reach out and hit at further distances. So this really is a pretty sweet package for concealed carry. On to the aftermarket. Since this is a Sig product and specifically a P365 product, there is a holster from every holster maker you could imagine, and all of the accessories are made for the gun. You can't swing a dead cat without aftermarket grip modules popping up in your Instagram feed. So if you're at the gun range and you see the guy whose truck is just covered in Sig Sauer stickers, that dude's loaded, because his magazines cost $50 a piece. If the guy has magazines all over the bench in front of him, daddy fat stacks. No way around it, guys. These things are expensive, and the gun is so new that the aftermarket magazines just really aren't there yet. So while the gun is really great, buying magazines for it sucks. But first we need to discuss the sacred relationship between the video creator and you, the subscriber. And if you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so and get in on the action. I make world-class firearms content and you watch this content. You remember just how much as a boy you loved monster truck rallies and watching Bigfoot destroy a bunch of junk cars. So you build a monster truck and you use my logo in the wheel well, so as you terrorize traffic riding around town, people will know of the world-class firearms content here on this channel. But if your commitment doesn't run that deep, I ask you just to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Ring the bell if you're feeling saucy. There are links in the description. Check out some of those discount codes. And there's a link to my Patreon where just $1 a month gets you 3 to 5 exclusive pieces of content a week. There's also a link to join Big Daddy Unlimited. Big Daddy Unlimited is a buyer's club where you can get the privilege of paying near wholesale price for stuff related to guns, so it's probably something that'd be of interest to you, so check them out. It's only 99 cents for the first month. So with that all said, back to the show. So final thoughts on the P365XL RomeoZero. It's another gun that Sig basically opened up the book and threw a super long name at, but we forgive him for it. The gun is very squared away. I quite like the gun. It's a great gun to carry. It's a pretty nice gun to shoot, and it does what it's supposed to do very well. I'm a really big fan of pistols coming from the factory with red dots. I really do think red dot sights are the future for pistols, and the rest of the market is just kind of coming to grips with that. I don't know whether this red dot is going to be the future, but I'll update you in a future review on this particular one. I enjoyed shooting this gun, guys. I really do. I was surprised how much I actually liked it because I've been known as a bit of a Sig hater in the past. But this is actually a pretty great gun, and if you want the capability of a red dot micro carry compact pistol, it's tough to argue that this isn't one of the better values in the clown car segment. So that's what I've got for you guys. If you're here and you want to learn how to shoot pistols better, can I point you at just 2 videos? If you don't have a lot of time, I did a video about stopping shooting Glocks to the left. It's applicable to all pistols. And I made a longer video talking about recoil management that is really worth it, in the words of the world's best shooters, with a demonstration on applying the concepts that they talk about. So check those videos out, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Thanks, guys.